Well, hello. We are here to give you the best of just a taste of what's ahead for spring. This is March, and we're all about celebrating great flavor. I know a lot of you have been really excited to see a seared scallop, but not just a seared scallop, a citrus spice seared scallop, together with a really amazing, almost spring corn risotto. As you might have heard Nicole and I chat about just a few minutes ago, again, many of you are thinking, spring? Are you kidding me? We've got a major snowstorm coming. Hate to tell you, even in Florida, where we're from, we woke up to some pretty chilly temperatures, but I know spring is coming, and this is a taste of that will give us just a huge lift of refreshing and not only refreshment, but deliciousness. Hopefully you've got some things together, a little bit of prep that's already been done. Hopefully you have a glass of wine in hand. You know, with PAM'S pairing, we always suggest a wine, and I suggested one that is arguably one of my favorites, and that's a Chardonnay, but a Chardonnay that's just lightly oaked, a Chardonnay that has a lot of fruit, and little hints of citrus that's going to really be beautiful with the citrus spice scallops, and really be beautiful with the citrus that's in even the risotto. This is a Talbot Cali Heart Chardonnay, and it has all of those things going on. So whatever you're having, maybe a little bit of bubbly, just make sure that it's something that you're really gonna help add to this whole idea of really a great party, because that's what cooking is all about. At least that's what I want it to be tonight. This is a stress-free zone that Nicole and I talk about all the time when it comes to cooking. That's what Facebook Live is all about. It's important. We've had to do some deep breathing because we had a little incident right before. Actually, we didn't, but our cameraman did. And because of that, we're doing a little different kind of Facebook Live. Nicole is behind the camera. She's going to be using the Nicole cam to get some up-close views of everything that we're doing. So sit back, enjoy, and if you run into another techno glitch, like your computer dies or maybe something happens to the internet, yours or ours, just sit back, keep going. Hopefully you have your recipe close to you. Hopefully you've got your book or printed out recipe close. So just keep moving, just keep following. We'll be back up, you'll be back up, and hopefully what's ahead is just really nothing but fun and nothing but deliciousness. So with that, let's get cooking. Always time. This is absolutely one of my favorite dishes, and it's probably the most requested one. Many of you know I have the incredible opportunity to host the Epcot International Food and Wine Festival. Many of you also know that many times, not only am I hosting, but I'm also cooking as chef. And every year I have someone say, please do your risotto. Can't wait to have the risotto. Every year someone says, can you show us how to do scallops? I can never make scallops taste like they taste at Seasons 52. I can never make scallops taste like I see on TV Food Network or on Gordon Ramsay. How do I make it happen? Well, we're going to talk about those tips and give you those techniques. And again, always it's all about the flavor. So no surprise, we always start every class with kind of looking at the mise en place, everything in its place. And that means you always want to have all of the ingredients kind of close at hand. The corn risotto is going to be where we start because risotto takes a little bit of time. It's a labor of love, I'll be honest, but such an incredible result that comes forth from it. And we're going to start doing some basic prep for it. Some of you already have done that. This is being done as a corn risotto. So first off, we're going to start with the prep, and that's just simply cutting the corn from the cob. Again, if you've done this, great time to take a sip of wine. When you're cutting corn from the cob itself, there's some safety tips. You see all kinds of little hacks on the internet, like you put it into a bundt pan or you stand it upright and cut down, and if you put it into a bowl, it catches it. I don't do any of those. Instead, I'm always seeking with anything I'm cutting, be it a pineapple, a butternut squash, or some corn, always try to look for a flat surface. So that's what I'm going to do first with my favorite knife, which is our Cutco. Really beautiful knife. I'm cutting a little bit of the corn off so I get that flat surface. And then with that, I'm going to simply go close to the cob itself and cutting again, flat surface, turning it right on its side. Turning again, flat surface. The corn doesn't go everywhere. The corn doesn't end up in places it shouldn't, and your fingers are still remaining. Always good. Now, I will tell you, if Nicole was standing here, she would say that her favorite thing for me to do with corn is to then scrape the corn and take some of that corn lusciousness out. I make a creamed corn, but not using cream at all, actually using a low-fat milk, but using the corn to give the creaminess to a cream corn, and I scrape those cobs. Today, we're not doing that, but instead, we're going to plop those corn cobs right into a pot because I'm going to let those corn cobs add a little bit of flavor to our corn risotto cooking stock. So I'm going to go ahead and cut one more. Again, hopefully you are right with us and doing exactly this. Once you get your corn cut, we're going to just set it aside. We'll be adding the corn to the risotto really is the last step. And you might say, but why are you doing it now? Because again, we want everything to be in its place. So there we go. We've got that in place. Going to add that to our corn and then move on. We're going to go ahead and cut the shallots. We're going to go ahead and cut the garlic because the shallots and the garlic are going to be used as step one in the risotto itself. So let's use our knife to actually be our vehicle to carry it right to our corn bowl and then move right on into the shallots. All good to go. So shallots are also quite easy to cut. Again, many of you have already done that, or maybe you couldn't find shallots and decided instead that you were just going to get a red onion or a classic onion. Fine to do. The way you cut shallots is very similar to how you cut an onion. Again, after you've peeled it, you go ahead and cut it right through the center, and then cutting one end off but leaving the root end in place, you run your knife just along the lines of the shallot. The shallot kind of guides you. It shows you exactly where to cut. Do one fine cut right down the middle. And then with your knife, just very gently rocking, you can cut that into a really nice and easy dice. Same principle with an onion. The only difference is with an onion, it's just a whole lot bigger. If Nicole was here, she would be asking, well, what's the difference between a shallot and an onion? I call a shallot kind of a cross between a mild onion and mild garlic. It's sweet, it's delicious, it kind of melts into a dish. Absolutely wonderful to use with a risotto. If you don't have it, no problem, substitute an onion. And again, those you can oftentimes buy already diced, so always nice. The garlic, if you've joined us for our earlier classes, you've seen me do garlic. It's quite simple to do. The only rule I have about garlic is never, ever, ever, ever buy the jarred garlic. Get fresh garlic cloves. They're so easy to work with once you know those essential tips and techniques. Again, no need for a garlic press, no need for any of those fancy gadgets that you see. All you need is a great knife and a little bit of strength. So you get your garlic clove in place. The first step, putting the knife flat, is just hit that with your wrist a couple times. And what you're doing in that is you're releasing the skin. You can see how easy that is then to just peel right off. Take the tip off, and then you do basically the same thing that you did with your shallot. Do some nice little cuts down the side, and then with your knife, gentle rocking, you just go ahead and do that fine mince of the garlic itself. And again, many of you are already one step ahead of us, so you already have it in place. Garlic minced, ready to go into the risotto. Next step is we're going to go ahead and get the lemon ready to use in the risotto. Again, like the corn, it's going to be added right at the end of the step. Two things we're going to do with the lemon. We're going to zest it. Nicole demonstrated in the earlier hello and thank you, welcome, how to be able to do that with a very easy planing system, a microplane that literally will just rub right against the lemon. This is a Meyer lemon. We were able to find some in our local grocery store, and I'm absolutely crazy about them. Just like the shallot is a little bit milder, a Meyer lemon is a little little sweeter than your classic lemon. It's almost a cross between a lemon and an orange. So if you've not seen them before, look for them, experiment with them. When you're zesting, you're literally raising and taking the plane right against the skin. You're not going deep. You don't want to get any of the pith or the white because that's where all the bitterness would be. But instead, you're just getting the zest, and the zest just gives all kinds of flavor. It's the essential oils of the lemon. Once you get it into the plane, just do a little quick hit, and there is your zest right in place. Now it's time to do the juicing. Important to do the zesting before you do the juicing because it's a little harder to do. You might have heard me use this tip before, but before I juice a lemon, a lime, even an orange, I always zap it in the microwave for about 30 seconds before. By doing that, it bursts open the cells within the citrus and it enables much more juice to flow forth. This is the handy citrus squeezer that you got with your winter kit. Again, you're putting that cut face of the lemon, in this case the Meyer lemon, right in place. And because it's been microwaved, look at all of that juice that comes forth from it. It's really quite amazing. The citrus squeezer keeps the seeds in place, so you don't have to worry about those going into the juice. One more time with the other half, and we have both the zest and now the juice of the lemon. So we are good to go. The only other thing that we want to do in terms of prep is we want to get ready with our basil. We're going to be doing a little bit of garnishing with fresh basil. And for this, I'm using the Cutco kitchen shears, which I'm quite excited about. Again, you might have seen posted earlier, we had an incredible opportunity to take a look at all the things that you can do with these shears. But one of my favorite things to do with them, particularly with basil, if I was to take my knife and start chopping at basil, basil's a little tender. It tends to bruise quite easily. You tend to get all of the great flavor of the basil left on your cutting board. But with the kitchen shears, instead, what you're doing is you're just snipping the basil. And when that's snipping, you're not bruising it. You can cut it as thin or as thick as you might like. And this is going to become the garnish that we're going to use later on the basil. I use these for so many things, everything from cutting pitas and tortillas into triangles to use as chips, all the way through to snipping herbs just like this. So that is all we have to do with the basil. So we're good to go. So prep is done. Shallots are cut. Onion is cut, or the garlic is cut. We have the basil ready to go. Corn is already cut. Time to get started, not just on our stock, but then to get started on our risotto. Already threw the corn cobs, if you will, into our pot. To that, I'm going to add chicken stock. Again, I'm using a chicken stock that is a lower sodium one. Any chicken stock will work. I tend to like those that are packaged in these vacuum sealed packages more than the cans. They tend to be a little lower in sodium and also tend to be a little fresher. The choices we have available to us now are just quite incredible. You're not going to use all of this. Potentially. I like to go ahead and get about 2 quarts, which is 8 cups of the chicken stock heating. Why? Because you're going to use somewhere between 6 and 8, but you need to have it heated because we're going to be adding that hot liquid to our risotto, and just so key to have it already hot. Otherwise, it ends up stopping the cooking of the risotto. So that in the pot, we're going to get the heat on. We have the chicken stock, we have those corn cobs. They're going to give just a little bit of flavor and even their own kind of umami that's being added to it. And then in addition, we're going to add just a few threads of saffron. Now, if you went to the store to buy saffron for the very first time, you may have said, oh my goodness, this might be the most expensive thing I've ever bought in a little tiny plastic container. It's true, but a little dab will do you of saffron. It just gives such flavor. If you've ever had paella, paella is made with saffron. It just gives this really, again, craveable kind of not only flavor but also color that gets imparted to this, what will become a saffron risotto. In addition, we're going to be using our Caribbean kitchen. The Caribbean kitchen is going to be your salt and pepper in the broth. Because we're using the Caribbean kitchen in this broth, we're not needing to use any salt and pepper in the risotto at all. It has everything we need going on right in the stock. So when you're adding the stock to the risotto, you're adding flavor to the risotto, one layer at a time. And that's really what risotto is. It's a layering of flavor. So really excited for you to have a chance to, maybe for some of you, taste it the first time, at least the first time in your own kitchen. We're going to let that come first to a boil. So I have it on high now, but then I'll turn it down to about a medium heat. Just want to keep it simmering. I'm not looking for it to be a rolling boil, just a nice simmer, because then it will start adding to the risotto. Also going to turn the risotto pot on, a nice big heavy bottomed pot. Important to have that heavy bottom because you might kind of get distracted a bit when you're stirring your risotto and you don't want it to scorch. So a nice heavy bottom pot. We're going to add just a little bit of olive oil to that, about 2 teaspoons. Going to let that come to heat as well. And then we're going to begin to add our wonderful flavoring components. Flavoring components are our shallots first. We'll let those start to saute. Normally, if I'm sauteing meat or scallops, as you'll see in just a moment, you'll always have me adding it only after the pan is just smoking hot. But with this, I'm looking to sweat the shallots a little bit more than saute them. I'm not looking to caramelize them. I'm not looking to get any color on them. So instead, I'm just looking for them to get that heat going and begin to start to sweat. Once that's done, I'm going to add my garlic, let it continue to sweat for about another 30 seconds or so. And then once everything is just flavorful and really happening, I'll add my rice. Risotto rice is classically arborio rice. It's a short grain rice. You can use any grain to make a risotto. You could do a barley risotto, you can do a spelt risotto, you can do probably some grains you've never heard of, a farro risotto potentially. But again, all that it's doing, and this is the procedure, is it's enabling that grain to bloom. As soon as we get the shallots and the garlic starting to release those wonderful aromatics that Jenna and Nicole are smelling right now, we will then add the arborio rice. As soon as we do, it's going to hit that heat and immediately start to open up the molecules within the grain. As it does, it's going to release a beautiful creaminess. It's the starch that's in the grain. That's going to start to release into the cooking liquid. And so there's no need to add cream. There's no need to add butter. There's no need to add a lot of excessive fats to this dish. Actually, the only fat that's in this dish is that touch of olive oil we use at the beginning, and then the finishing with Parmesan cheese, which is a umami bomb in and of itself. We let that begin to saute, and once we do, then we add our arborio rice. Now, the key with this is to get it into the shallots and the garlic with that olive oil, and you just begin to stir it rather quickly to coat all of those grains of the arborio rice. As I said, any short grain rice can work. A lot of people like one called cannaroli. And again, any grain can work as well, even whole grains. And I get that question a lot as well. All I'm doing is just quite quickly, not wanting the rice to burn, but to just coat it with that wonderful flavor and the oil. Once I see it glistening just a bit, it's now time to start adding the liquid. But the first liquid I'm going to add is some wine. Half a cup of wine. You can use any white wine in this dish. You might want to use the one that you're cooking with, or you might want to use wine that maybe isn't quite so exquisite. What happens? Oh my goodness. Nicole just got a little bit of intoxication while she's on the Nicole cam. But again, as soon as you add that wine to the rice, you get an immediate evaporation of the alcohol. What you get left instead is this concentration of the wonderful flavors that are in the wine. You get this incredible acidity, you get this layer of flavor that's the first liquid to enter into the rice. All that you're doing is stirring that, allowing that to be uptaken into the rice, and now the layering of flavor and the layering of liquid begins. Once the wine has been absorbed, which just takes 2 or 3 minutes, once that alcohol is evaporated off, I know many of you are saying, oh, what a waste that is, but a nice one. Then you start adding this wonderful saffron broth, about a cup at a time. I measured what was in my ladle. It's about 3/4 of a cup. So I'm putting 1 ladle and then just a little more. Add that right into the rice, stir, and now the labor of love begins. We got it started, we got everything going. Now we're just adding the liquid, slowly adding the liquid, lovingly added the liquid, and then stirring as we go. This is one of my favorite dishes to serve to a crowd. And there's a couple of reasons why. We'll talk a little bit about some shortcuts that you can take with it. But generally at a Thanksgiving or any kind of event, when I'm cooking for a crowd, people will walk in and inevitably say, what can I help you with? Well, I kind of always want to say, just kind of move on out, get a glass of wine, relax. But they always want to be put to work. So the best thing I can do is say, could you stir the risotto? And that's exactly what I have a lot of people doing. Stirring, and all that we're trying to do with the risotto is with each addition of liquid is just give it some loving time to be able to absorb and uptake that liquid. The way you know is it's almost like the parting of the Red Sea. You're stirring that liquid and you're stirring that liquid. And if you pull your spoon across it, if you find that it immediately starts to join again, as it's starting to do here, it's not quite ready. Give it just a little more time. Keep stirring, keep stirring. Once you can pull that spoon through and you don't see that quick rejoining of the liquid, that tells you that it's time to add just a little bit more. And again, about a cup or so at a time. Your flavor is in this broth. It's the chicken stock together with the corn, together with the saffron, together with Caribbean Kitchen. And we're going to let that go. I'm going to turn the heat down now. I've had it on kind of a medium-high heat, but again, not wanting it to scorch, and I've got other work to do, people. So we're going to let that go to kind of a medium and let that just continue to cook. When I start to, not hear it bubbling quite so much, I'll take a look and it'll probably be time to add some more broth. But in the meantime, time to get started on the scallops themselves. So I'm going to move this to the back. And let's get going with the scallops. As I said, I have so many people asking, how in the world do you get scallops to taste delicious? How in the world do you get them to be as caramelized as you want them to be? And there's some basic rules about scallops that make them really scrumptious and unctuous, that give you that caramelization. And the first rule is that you need to buy them dry, and you need to cook them dry. Buy them dry. You saw this when you looked at your grocery list. I asked you to get dry packed scallops. Dry pack means that they've not been pumped with some additional fluid, sodium phosphate, all kinds of things that get pumped into seafood. It helps it do well with freezing, but it also adds to the weight. The problem is, because you can have as much as 20 to 25% additional water pumped into the scallop, as soon as that scallop hits heat, it immediately releases that water. And what you end up having is a steamed, boiled scallop, which is no good for anyone, as compared to that perfectly seared scallop that we're going to be trying to do tonight. So buy them dry, but then make sure you're going to cook them dry. Now, I bought these frozen. They were dry packed, but they were frozen, meaning that when I came home, I needed to lay them on paper towels, just like I've done here, so that when they thawed, that paper towel would absorb the liquid that was just in the freezing. Again, no added liquid pumped into these. They were dry packed, but still, you're gonna get a little bit of moisture released. Not only did I have them on an under layer of paper towel, I also had one on top and patted those dry. Another little tip is that when I went to buy these at the market, they had some already out, and I asked if they had been previously frozen, and they said yes, of course they had. So I asked, could I get them still frozen? So rather than they're thawing them, that may have been yesterday or the day before, and laying on ice, taking in more liquid, instead I got them frozen, brought them home individually frozen, just like this, and did the thawing. So buy them dry, make sure you have them dry. If you can't find dry pack and you need to just go with a pretty basic commercial scallop, they're still delicious. You just have to go to an extra measure. Sometimes I'll put those on a baking cooling rack, kind of like you put Christmas cookies on, to enable that liquid to be able to drain. So on a classic sheet, but with a baking rack, with the scallops on top of it and paper towels underneath, to be able to collect that moisture. Dry them out as much as you can. So really key, still keeping an eye on my risotto. It's just about ready to add some more liquid. But before we do, it's time to go to the next step, and that is to get your pan smoking hot. The pan hot is probably, let's say if Gordon Ramsay had to choose what was most important about scallops, assuring that having quality scallops would just be job one. I would say the next step would always be making sure that pan is, again, smoking hot. Smoking hot means it's almost smoking. Smoking before you add the olive oil or butter, whatever you might be cooking with. We're, of course, cooking with olive oil. We're going to let that just start to heat while I add just a little more liquid to the risotto. Jenna, is it smelling good?
Oh, it smells amazing, Pam. I can't wait to eat this dinner.
I love it. Have we had any questions or people following along?
Oh, we've got lots of members following along.
Awesome.
No questions yet. Everybody likes your tips about cooking the risotto and the
awesome
scallops.
Okay, well then we'll continue. So pan's getting smoking hot. The risotto's cooking along. Next step is PS flavoring before you get it into the pan, but right before. Same thing we're trying to do. We're trying to keep these scallops dry. If I was to flavor these, spice them an hour before, what's going to happen is the little bit of sodium that might be in the spice or any kind of the turbinado sugar that might be in, like in citrus spice, it will act as a sponge and start pulling liquid from the scallops. Again, it's kind of undermined everything we've tried to do. So instead, have them dry, and then right before you get them into the pan, sprinkle them and sprinkle them well. Citrus spice is a rub. With that, it means you really want to coat them. You're not looking to just do a little light ginger sprinkle. You're really wanting to coat it as if it's a rub on a pork rib, or if it's on a pork tenderloin. You're not wanting to really see any of the flesh of the scallop, but instead just sprinkle the rub right on top of it. Now we're doing a good number here. I don't know how you all did at home if you were thinking, well, it calls for 12 scallops, but I'm just cooking for 2 of us, or maybe I'm just cooking for myself tonight. Again, this recipe works. The risotto you can beautiful for reheating. It's even something you can do in advance. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then you can cook scallops based on whatever your company need might be. The only thing, and this goes back to the next tip, is make sure not to overcrowd your pan. We talk about that even in the instructions. Overcrowding does the same thing. They don't like each other too much, and if you overcrowd, it tends to cause a lot more moisture to release into the pan, again doing the same thing, tending to steam the scallops as compared to getting that really beautiful sear. If you're doing it for a crowd, and in this case I'm doing 12, you might even want to, and I suggest this in the recipe, do it in 2 batches, maybe 6 in one pan and then 6 in another pan, or cook them. They cook very, very quickly. Get them out of the pan, and while they're resting, then go ahead and do the next batch. And speaking of resting, that's the next step. Once you get them into that hot pan, not overcrowding them, you want to let them alone. You want to let them be happy. You want to let them kind of do what they need to do. And then when they come out, they need some time to rest. So the pan is really smoking hot. I'm going to add just a little bit of oil to it. And now I'm going to add the scallops. The key with it is test the first one. Get it into the pan. If you don't hear that sizzle, pull it out and wait just a bit. Don't worry about the fact that it touched the heat. Get it out. Because if you don't hear that sizzle, you're never going to get that caramelized sear. So critical to do. Add these. I'm going to probably, as you can see, not add too many to this pan. Probably will end up adding, not like in that one, probably end up adding just about 8 scallops. And again, just enough to let it kind of be happy and do its thing. Once they start searing, I'm going to take the temperature down to about medium-high, but always want to start on that really high heat because remember, smoking hot, then add your oil, then add the scallops. These are going to cook based on the size about 2 minutes on one side. Then we're going to flip them and cook them for about another minute on the other side. The way you know that they're ready to be flipped, they kind of talk to you. You'll see them actually starting to lift up just a little bit from the pan, start to release, and you'll see that first maybe 1/16 of an inch starting to get a little translucent as compared to that more opaque level that you traditionally see in a scallop. With that, if you turn it too quickly, it's like you never recover. If you turn it too quickly, you're never going to get that incredible caramelization. This is your money side right here. That first hit when it goes into the pan is the side that you're going to serve face up when you actually serve the dish. So you really want to get the best of that caramelization. You can always try one and see how it's kind of looking. I would say, most of you would say, well, that's looking really good. But the truth is, I want it to go a little bit further than that. I want it to be brown, golden, and delicious. So again, turn that one, but I kind of want the others to hang out just a little bit. Again, generally 2 minutes or so. If they're really large scallops, these were about U12s. They're about 1 ounce per. Sometimes you can, or excuse me, U16s, about 1 ounce per scallop, but sometimes I buy them as U10s, U12s. They're almost 2 ounces per scallop. They take just a little bit longer to be able to work their magic. So we're looking, we're watching. It smells amazing. Let's flip this puppy, and you see now we're starting to get much more of that caramelization in play. That one makes me very, very happy indeed. See if we can get this one to flip for us. Yes, we can. Hello. Oh, now we're talking. You see, just that little bit of extra time. This was probably 1.5 minutes in. This was probably right at 2 minutes in. This was just maybe 10 seconds more, and that maybe 5 seconds more. But the difference makes such a difference with the whole of it. Again, just that beautiful, beautiful kind of caramelization. We get these flipped over. We're going to let them go just another, as I said, maybe 1 minute or so. And while that's happening, I'm going to go over here and check my risotto. It is just right at the place that it's time to start tasting it and seeing if it's taken all the liquid that it needs to. Don't know where yours are right now, but I'm thinking this one's just about where I want it, which is al dente. That means it's still a little firm to the bite. And it is. I'm gonna add just one more addition of the broth, and that will probably be the last one that I do. While that's doing its magic, I'm going to get these scallops out of the pan and again, let them rest. Beautiful. I've mentioned sometimes you can get a little ahead of risotto, and the way you do it is you get it exactly to the place that it is right now, and that is about most of the way done. This is just a little bit more firm to the bite than I wanted, a little more al dente, but that's the place that I could actually stop the cooking and do that by getting it off the stove and getting it onto a sheet pan, a larger sheet pan, lay it out so it's a very shallow, maybe just 2 inches in the pan, and get it into the refrigerator. It stops the cooking, but then when I'm ready to cook for my crowd and I'm not wanting to kind of stand over it, continually checking to see how it's doing, all I need to do is get it back into the pan, add that additional ladle of liquid, and then we have it taken all the way to finish. That's how restaurants do risotto. It's a restaurant hack in and of itself, because if restaurants tried to start from scratch with risotto every time you came in to order it, you would be sitting there for 35 to 40 minutes. Instead, they have risotto on their menu, but they get it out to you in about 8 to 10 minutes. And they do it because they already have it ready. It's already kind of pre-portioned. They get it into a pan, add the additional broth, but then they start adding the goodness. So if it's a butternut squash risotto, they add the butternut squash. If it's wild mushroom risotto or truffle risotto, they add that. We're adding at that point our corn. And again, this is the corn that we cut off right at the beginning. Let's get that added right in. The corn is going to cook very, very quickly. The risotto is, again, piping hot, as you can see, and the sweetness of that corn is going to start releasing into the risotto itself. After adding the corn, we're going to add some Parmesan cheese, and this is Parmesan cheese that doesn't come from a little can. Instead, it's Parmesan cheese that either you have bought already grated, or maybe you've used an actual brick of Parmesan cheese and you've grated it yourself. Do we have a question?
We do have a question. Danielle would like to know if you would add more olive oil or shallots when you're reheating the pan from the refrigerator.
Oh, that is an excellent question. Actually, a little bit of olive oil just to coat the bottom of the pan because you're going to get this going in, but no need for more garlic or shallots because it's already in. But just that little bit of olive oil together with the additional chicken stock. So you remember I said we're going to probably have more stock than we really need. It's great to save. It's great to freeze. You can defrost it in the microwave, you can defrost it in your refrigerator, and then you have it available for just these moments to rehydrate something. The corn has done its magic. Now I'm going to add about 3/4 of a cup of the grated parm. I'm going to save just a little bit. I put a cup of it in this bowl so that I might want to garnish with that little bit of extra Parmesan on the scallop dish once I get ready to serve it. At this point, you're getting all of that umami that's coming in from the Parmesan cheese. You see all of that creaminess that's in play. You could add some of the basil that you snipped with your great shears. You could taste it and see if it needs just a little bit more Caribbean, and we will do that. But before, this is the time. So good. This is the time that you also want to add your lemon. Remember, I had zested the lemon and I did the little bit of lemon juice. This is going to bring the whole flavor of this up. It's going to bring flavor high notes into the dish. Again, the fact that I used a Meyer lemon is giving even a little bit more. Traditional lemons does all of it. It just brings this amazing acidity and balance to the dish. It kind of brings out the greatness of that wine that we put in right at the beginning. And this is the time that you would then maybe put just a little more touch of the Caribbean. Remember, the only Caribbean kitchen we had in it was what was in the broth right at the beginning. Gonna add just a touch of it. Going to taste it one more time. And I am absolutely in heaven. I don't know if you've tasted yours yet, but oh, so good. So it's time to do our plating. At this point, the risotto's done. If you wanted to turn it off and let it sit on the stove for just a bit, if you weren't trying to kind of rush it all and get it all together, you could probably let this sit and just rest for a good 15-20 minutes. It's gonna stay steaming hot. Just put a lid on it, and then you can serve it when your guests arrive or when you're actually ready to plate the meal. We're doing scallops tonight, but you could serve this with a piece of fish, you could serve it with a piece of chicken. Those of you that are eating in a very plant-based, plant-forward kind of way could look at anything from a bean cake, could look at anything from even adding beans right into it. One of my chef friends makes a barley and spinach risotto and adds chickpeas to it for their protein. It's just absolutely fantastic. So much that can be done. What we're gonna do though is go ahead and get this puppy plated. I'm gonna do that by scooping some of our absolutely delicious risotto right into the middle of the plate. Those of you that have seen me plate of recent have known that I do lots of little swooshes on the plate. This risotto is just so beautiful and just so rustic and flavor packed that I'm really not doing anything fancy, although I could. I could put a little bit of a Meyer lemon oil around it, or maybe I could do a little swoosh of some reduced balsamic vinegar onto the plate. Lots of little added things that you can do. But for tonight, we're gonna keep it simple, people. What we're gonna do is instead let the scallops be the star. I'm gonna top the risotto with the scallops. And again, you can go any way you want, depending on the size. I called for 12 of the large scallops in this. These turned out to be a little bit smaller, so I actually might top it with a little bit more. Little star right there. Let's sprinkle just a little touch of our basil that we've already have snipped and to be so absolutely beautiful. And then a little bit of that Parmesan that I had reserved. And let's not put it on the scallops. Let's instead let the scallops kind of be the star with all that hard work you did with the caramelization. Maybe just a little sprinkle of Caribbean kitchen, which I clearly breathed in. And we have got an absolutely amazing meal. What do you think? Really good. Okay, Nicole, you've done a great job filming. I'm hoping you all have done a great job cooking. And all I can say is grab that little glass of wine. You've got your meal. You've got someone maybe you've cooked with. Now it's time to really enjoy that meal. Keep the questions coming, but most importantly, keep the enjoyment coming of great food that's great for you, that's not only spicing for flavor, but spicing for wellness, and keep some pictures coming too. We want to see you in spring. We want to see you in our spring club. So excited about what's ahead. Cheers, my friends. Bon appetit.